I mean, I didn't do the math. I didn't do the math right, but they didn't have enough. I mean, 71 they had? We'll get the math right, I promise. It doesn't matter. The math is that Minnesota is up 3-0 in this series, and the math doesn't make sense when you look at their contracts either for what they're paying them and what they're getting. 126, 109. It's 135 on the East Coast. All right, cut me some slack here. We welcome in John Gonzalez. John, I'm going to add that up in a second here. Let me do the quick math. 25 and 23. That's 48 plus 28. Yeah, that's okay. So I was 76.
Carry the denominator.
Right. Yeah, it doesn't matter. The only number that matters here is Minnesota's up 3-0 in this series, and they just look like the better team from start to finish. What are you seeing out of Minnesota?
You're absolutely right. I mean, man, what a reversal, right? During the regular season, the Suns had the Wolves number, and even in that last game, and then all of a sudden playoffs come around and the Wolves go, no, this is a different game now, and we're really well suited to play it, and you guys aren't. Anthony Edwards has been awesome in this series. He was again tonight, as you mentioned, 36, 9, and 5. On 52% shooting, he was really efficient, and he came up big in the fourth quarter when the game got a little dicey, when the Suns started to catch fire a little bit from three, but then Gobert and Cat both had double-doubles. The key to this series so far has been the Wolves have been awesome on the boards. They dominated again tonight, and they've been awesome in the paint. They dominated again tonight in the paint, and the Suns don't have an answer for that. They're a small team. They like to shoot threes. They didn't have Grayson Allen tonight. That really showed. They went 33 minutes without a three. It's hard to catch up with the Wolves, especially when Anthony Edwards is playing like a superstar this entire series. 22 years old, Akeem. He's here right now putting everybody on notice that he's ready to go.
7th 30-point playoff game as he matches Kevin Garnett for the most in T-Wolves history. We are seeing an ascension. We already knew he was a superstar. I remember asking you before this series started, the big knock on him when he came into the league was he didn't know if he really liked basketball. We're clearly seeing that he loves the game. He loves his teammates, and he is so invested. What are we witnessing right now? And I know that they're up 3-0, and there's a long road to go here to get to the Western Conference Finals, which is really what their ceiling could be. They could be an NBA champion for sure, but if they get to the Western Conference Finals, that's a heck of a season for this team. Regardless of that, what are we witnessing right now out of Ant?
We're seeing the rise of a superstar, absolutely, in real time. He's 22 years old, way ahead of the curve. I've always liked him. I always thought he could be a good player. I always thought he could be one of the best in the league. He is right now one of the best players in the NBA. He made Team USA for a reason. I think what we really saw, though, and you know, in a weird way, it ended up helping out the Wolves. But when Karl Anthony Towns went down with that knee injury, and everybody went, oh, see, this is where the Wolves are going to fall off, because there were a lot of Wolves doubters this season. I was not among them. The other two people that I do the podcast with, Beyond the Arc podcast, Bill Ryder and Ashley Nicole Moss, they were like, I'm not so sure about the Wolves. And they were convinced that after Cat went down, that's when all of a sudden the Wolves would fall apart. And Anthony Edwards said, no, we're not only not going to fall apart, I'm going to make sure that we continue to win at the same rate that we've been. We're going to be in it at the top of the Western Conference all season long, right up until the wire. And that's going to be because, I mean, he really stepped forward. And now in the playoffs, he's taken even another step forward where all of a sudden people are going, wow, at 22, we're always looking around for the next face of the league. Well, there's one for you right now. I mean, he has put the Suns on notice. He's about to send the Suns, who have an exorbitant payroll, just like the Wolves, but who had huge expectations. They're about to go home on vacation after another game, probably, and it's because of Anthony Edwards leading the way.
Suns in 4, but Suns in 4 another kind of way. Suns in 4. I mean, they're gonna. Yeah. I mean, this has sweep written all over it. I finally added up the tally here with 76 combined for the big three of Phoenix, which pales in comparison to how much money they're making on their contracts. This is disappointing. And you and I talked about the big three with the Clippers and the big three with the Phoenix Suns. It's a major disappointment thus far.
Oh, huge disappointment, and it's about to become a very difficult offseason. You see how much money they're all making right there. They're about to become a very expensive team, which, because of the new rules, makes it very restrictive on how you can build around them. With the new tax, with the new rules, you can sign your own guys. They just re-signed Grayson Allen to a new deal. They can bring back Royce O'Neal, who's going to be a free agent. But after that, you're looking at minimum contract guys. So then you might think, all right, well, what can we do here? Well, picks that you can trade. You can't move Bradley Beal because for whatever whatever reasons surpassing understanding, they allowed him to bring his no-trade clause with him from Washington, even though they rescued him from a Wizards team. You're not going to move Devin Booker because Devin Booker is in his prime and he's the face of the franchise. That leaves one real asset on your, and maybe you could fire Frank Vogel, but why would you do that? This isn't a Frank Vogel problem. That leaves one real asset that you could move if you really wanted to, and that's Kevin Durant. But why would you do that? Because the whole reason this experiment started in the first place is because they went out and got Kevin Durant and brought him from Brooklyn and traded all those picks. So this is a new owner in Matt Ishbia who wanted to make a splash on these three guys together, and now they're essentially locked into this team, and so far, diminishing returns on investment, not a great return. They have to be going into the offseason like, I don't know what we're going to do.
Yeah, it's going to be what could have been. You're paying these guys $150 million this season. You get 76 combined points in Game 3, and you're one win away from elimination here in the first round of the NBA playoffs. Yeah, shaking your head. I'm shaking my head. All the Phoenix Suns fans are shaking their head. We get what you pay for, and you're supposed to get a little something. At least get out of the first round. Just a bad matchup. John, we appreciate it. I'll see you on Saturday, Super Saturday, coming up here in the NBA playoffs. Appreciate it.
All right, my friend.
One of the biggest wins in Timberwolves playoff history. They win by 25. Look at the wins here. They're coming against the Lakers and the Suns. Game 3, Game 1. I mean, look at this. They're just these are two of their biggest wins in this series. Game 1 and Game 3 against the Suns, and now they are one win away from their first playoff series victory in some 20.
Is here. And Tim, as we were watching that fourth quarter, you said that there is a glaring difference between these two teams, and it's a long list. It's glaring in what ways to you?
So many different ways. And tonight, I thought, was their best game of the series, which is interesting because Phoenix had one shot to make this a series, and Minnesota hits them with everything they have on both ends. So how many different ways? First, the balance in scoring was what was impressive tonight, because this is something we don't talk about with the Mavericks. We talk about their defense all the time. Look at the number of guys that are making shots on this team. So their offense was humming at a really high level, and they're getting it from different places. Phoenix, they don't have that. They've got three guys that are pretty much going to have great nights for them to have a chance to win. That wasn't the case with Minnesota. They've got one superstar offensive player who's capable of doing all kinds of things athletically. And then they've got a bunch of dudes that are more than capable of staying in the lane, filling their role. Something else they had that stood out to me was their defense on their top three players. Like the number of guys they can put on. You heard Anthony Edwards give a shout out to Nikhil, Alexander Walker, Jaden McDaniels. There's a reason for that. He's talking about their defense on Booker, Durant, Beal throughout this series. And then, by the way, once they pressure up Scott, what do? They funnel them to all that size. Rudy Gobert back there, Karl Anthony Towns back there, Naz Reid's back there. You can't have a roster full of more complete defensive players than the Minnesota Timberwolves have put together. Their rebounding advantage at the end of possessions, they almost doubled them up on the boards at one point in the fourth quarter on the night. That's demoralizing when you got one shot every time down the floor, and you can't keep them off the offensive glass. You add all that up, and this is just an absolute mismatch. This is probably the worst team Phoenix could have played because of the defensive prowess of this team and the way that Phoenix wants to have space to operate with their three elite offensive players. Minnesota was having none of it.
It's interesting, like Curry's already gone, LeBron's down 0-3, KD's down 0-3. I'd say it's like changing of the guard to some degree, but then Denver's over there like, we're still here. I mean, it's not, and I alluded to it with Ant, like we're looking at Denver, Minnesota. That will be nasty. Got to get those 1 wins. But, I mean, it's pretty clear they're on a collision course here.
That guard changed last year. So it's only 1 year of that. So Jokic is still a young player. So, yeah, they're